Let me set the context for the topic for the American dream. It's a very complicated idea. It's in fact rooted in a complex set of ideas that touch on sociology, political science, economics. Many people associate it with the founding of this country. Robert Bellah, who is a sociologist of religion, actually shortly before he passed away 2 years ago, gave the last Tanner lectures here at Harvard, was probably the best student about the American dream, really trying to devote most of his 50-year career as a sociologist to understand it, what it meant. He often talked about the American dream as actually being rooted in 4 different ideas. One idea rooted in the private sphere, in which the idea of the American dream was that it was largely the idea that you could be left alone. It goes back to the Pilgrims who came to this country. It was the right to sort of be connected to one's own concerns, goals that you have set for yourself, the notions of being left alone to pursue them. But as Bellah points out, after that the question is, but toward what ends? After you're left alone to pursue those things, for what purpose? And he said that was one of the problems with this private sphere idea. He then connected it to another element of the American dream, also again rooted with those same founders, basically the public idea of the American dream, which is rooted in the inherited conventions of your community, your family, an allegiance to those traditions, a respect for what came before, and in particular, again, we often see this idea in institutions where the church, which was an important part of the founding of this country. But then the question is, but what about people who don't share those communities, who come from different traditions? How do they fit into the picture, Bellah argued, is the question that you're left with that aspect of the American dream. The third part is breaking free from norms and conventions. In fact, the idea is that you get to decide for yourself. And in fact, much of what we often talk about in terms of liberal arts and sciences education is the capacity to critically engage on norms and traditions and those taken for granted aspects. But then he said the question is, well, what do you do after you're liberated? Freedom is a great horse to ride, but where do you ride it? And the fourth one is yet another one rooted in the idea of a shining city on a hill, which is the idea of building a better world, a more just society, that one needs to get power in order to advance notions of fairness and equity. Each of these raise fundamental questions about the American dream. And in particular, I think this is an apt time to be talking about these questions because we are at a unique moment in American history. President Obama only a few months ago asked the question if the American dream was still alive. We're in a searching moment around that idea. He talked about the growth in inequality, which now exists at this country at levels that haven't been seen since the dawn of the industrial age. Others point to the fact that most of the polls that we now see believe that 3/4 of the country now believes the U.S. is headed in the wrong direction, while 60% of our political class believe we're headed in the right direction. CEO pay, which used to be 2-to-1 in 1960 from the ratio of the President of the United States to CEOs, is 62-to-1 today. So all of these questions, social mobility, which our own faculty have shown has slowed down considerably, institutions that we once counted on in terms of creating the social order in our society that made the American dream possible, businesses and corporations increasingly do things like tax inversions and saying they owe no loyalty to any institution or nation or people. So much of this is driven, I think, about active debates about the American dream, and I'm very excited to have two of our discussants who I think are very well versed in thinking deeply about not only the American tradition and what it means, but also approaching this from its moral components, a comparative component. So let's get started.
you.